After all the jacks are in their boxes, clowns have all gone to bed.
Welcome to All Waves Considered. This is Tom Hutson, and I am your host today.
And I'm Julius Spicciani, and we're talking to Tom Hutson, and we're going to be playing some footage from April 11th and maybe a couple days in between there.
Listened to a couple of your other podcasts, and I really enjoyed them. I love some of the stories that Charlie said.
I know, he's so good.
Yeah, and then Brenda, I could relate to some of those because she was talking about the contest in Hatteras in '74. They had the U.S. and the East Coast back to back, and she was there, and I was there at that one too. See, what was the other one you did? Oh, John Green. Yeah. And that was neat it was neat to hear his perspective too.
Yeah, the paddling across the bay, or the sound, that's the one that blew my mind.
Well, there wasn't much to do back then.
Yeah. The power of boredom. Yeah. You know, there's this trope that men aren't men anymore. Is that something that you buy into?
Oh gosh, you hate to paint it with such a wide brush.
I know.
But maybe there's some truth to it. But gosh, they probably said about us when we were kids.
Yeah.
And our parents came from the World War II generation.
Right.
Complete slackers, you know?
Yeah, it's like if you grew up in the Depression, you're like, oh, yeah, you think you got it hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of immigrants, too, they come, if you're fleeing a war zone, if you come to a stable area, you're like, we like it here.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. So I guess it is all perspective, huh?
I don't know. Yeah, sorry for going on left field for you. Can you tell me maybe a funny childhood story?
I moved to Gulf Breeze I think my parents bought their first house here in Gulf Breeze in 1960, and they paid $12,000 for it on Gilmore Drive.
Oh, my God.
And then to make it even better, in 1973, when I was in high school, they bought a house on High Point Drive on Woodland Bayou in the heart of Gulf Breeze on the water for $37,000.
Okay, and what year did you say that was?
That was 1973.
Okay, wow. That's wild.
Yep. Yeah.
We'll have to figure out what that is adjusted for inflation.
You know, I've done that, and there's more to it than just inflation because it's nowhere near what it would actually sell for now.
Mm-hmm.
That house for $900 and some thousand, probably 5 or 6, 7 years ago, but I bet they put $100,000 into it. It's crazy, just the demand on this area now. Where it did not used to be at all.
Yeah. That's something. I just did one with Pasco, and that was one thing that he talked about was the impact of a population influx and basically the stresses that it's put on the infrastructure, and it's degrading water quality.
Oh, I'm sure. That makes sense. It's interesting to me that I don't know if you know who Hank Warner is.
Yeah, I've never had one of his boards. They're so cool though.
Well, Hank one time told me, because Hank spent a lot of time here. He's from San Diego, and he came here and worked with Yancey, and he's been back and forth many times. And I remember when the lots in Gulf Breeze were going for about $20,000, which to me seemed kind of high.
Right. Context.
He says, Tom, you just wait. When everything gets built out, you're going to see the prices just start to skyrocket because it happened in Pacific Beach when he was a kid.
Wow.
And I thought, well, maybe, but this isn't Pacific Beach. But gosh, he was so spot on because, man, once they started getting all built up and everything east of Gulf Breeze down the highway built up, it just went crazy.
I wonder back then if there were cities advertising that they existed and they wanted people to come. The city of Pensacola has an advertising budget.
And this sounds crazy. I don't know where I picked this up, but there was a time I can remember that they were trying so hard to get people to come to our beach, and they were gonna, I don't know if they were gonna make the big beach ball, the water tower into a flamingo or something. They wanted to do something to draw people. And it just seems so silly now when you think about it, because all they had to do was wait a little while. Of course, no one knew that, but, it took care of itself eventually. In fact, Julius, if you ever want a great podcast to learn about Pensacola surfing,
Mm-hmm.
if Hank Warner would take the time to talk to you, and I've got his phone number,
Oh my God.
he would. He's given the best perspective of Pensacola surfing of
Ah,
anyone I've ever heard, but he's an outsider, and
wow.
he just getting to know the guys back in the early days, like
Right.
Yancey and his brother John, and
Mm-hmm.
all the early crew, Brad English and Robin Martin and all those guys. He's such a great storyteller, and he
Yeah.
has such a good perspective of it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Anyway, he would be great to talk to.
Yes, please. Let's do that. I'm going to Costa Rica on Monday, but when I come back, I want to do that.
Yeah. I'll send a note to Hank and see if he'd be willing.
That man's probably lived
Oh,
on a
he
lot
ha-
of living.
He's got so many
And still
great
is.
stories. Yes.
It's very interesting. Like part of my undergrad was sociology, and I used to tutor athletes, and my favorite subjects to tutor them were anthropology. And I feel like surfing is such a dynamic place because like the activity is there's so much going on, and a lot of the people attracted to it have a lot going on too. So it's like it's a very intellectually interesting space to be a historian of and to participate in.
I love it. That's why every day I try to make a post on social media about our history around here, because to me it's really interesting. And I like for the young guys to see what it used to be like, and I like to remind the old guys what it was like. You know, in some ways it was better, some days it was worse.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see what it was like and just have that perspective.
Right. Yeah. And what do you think, what is that perspective, and what has changed and gotten worse or better? You know, both of them.
A couple of things that come to my mind. It's better now, surfing's better now in the sense that you have so much, like you can turn on your phone and just get a world of surf information.
Yeah.
And
Prediction.
the
Yeah.
quality of the surf, the equipment's better, the surfboards, the wetsuits, and there's so much
Yeah.
stuff's better. But like back in the 70s when I kind of became of age as a surfer, we got a surf magazine once every 2 months, and then
Yeah.
once a year on TV on the ABC Wide World of Sports, they'd have a surf contest, and you would be buckled down on
Wow.
the floor watching the TV because you didn't want to miss the 10 minutes of surfing.
Now you can watch an unlimited amount of surf videos on
Yes,
YouTube if you wanted
yes.
to.
And if a surf movie came to Pensacola, there's no way anyone was going to miss it. I mean, it was the place to be. It was the way to get information.
That's cool.
And it was full of excitement, just so full of excitement. But some of the things that were different, okay, Dave Skelton, who was a great photographer back then,
I'm just learning about him.
I've got a bunch of his pictures that I put on social media. He's been very gracious to let me use them. He took so many pictures and helped make Pensacola kind of famous in the surfing world. But he told me, he goes, Tom, he goes, the surfers own the beach, especially in the wintertime, because nobody wanted to live there.
Right. Yeah.
And so, like, you know, when you're talking about it, like from a historical perspective or how culturally, how this impacted things, like 5 guys could rent a house on the beach for $125 a month. But I mean, that's the total.
Yeah.
So each of them are paying $25 a month to make $125 total. And so what that meant was that people lived all over the beach. And so if you had nothing to do, you would always just drive around the beach and you'd run into people or ride your bike around the beach. And there was just people that lived out there. And it was just, you'd see everybody. Where now it's so expensive. No one can, you know, most surfers can't afford a house out there.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't even think about it.
So that's different. It was just cheap to own a car. You know, you could get a used Volkswagen for $500. And so a lot of surfers didn't even have a job, or they had very minimal jobs, you know, and they could just surf all the time. To me, in my mind, I kind of get idealistic about it, you know. In some ways it was great, but on the other hand, there wasn't that much to do around here because, one, if you had no money, you couldn't afford to do much, and there just wasn't much happening other than if you were into surfing, you just, I mean, if it was up, you surfed. I mean, you would surf all the time, all day long. And I mean it, you would come in, you'd surf, you'd go get a bite to eat real quick at the Pack-a-Sack, which is now the 7-Eleven store on the beach. And then you'd go back out there and you'd surf for a few more hours. You just never left.
I'm sorry, what did you say that you ate?
Well, it was called the Pack-a-Sack, which was the 7-Eleven right there on the beach by, you know where the boardwalk is?
Yeah.
None of that used to be there. It was just this one lone pack-a-sack store. You know, you'd go get like a common thing is you get a Thirsty Smash, which is this orange drink, totally artificial, and then it was probably like 15 cents, and then you'd get a bag of these things called potato logs, and they were just chopped.
Okay.
They would slice a potato up and I guess fry it, and
That sounds
put
fantastic.
some salt and pepper on it, and you get a bag for like 25 cents, and you were stuffed. So
That's carbs and electrolytes and sugars. That sounds like
Yeah.
perfect. You just need some protein and you'd be a
I know,
nutritionist.
I know. So anyway, it was just surfing all the time. And I mean, when you weren't surfing, you were
Yeah.
thinking about it, you were talking about it.
Oh my God.
And so at least that's my memory of it anyway.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like life is like that.
I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but I think about
You're fine.
back then, you know, we had a surf magazine that came once every 2 months. And then I think around 78, they started coming out monthly, which was awesome. You could get a surf, and there's Surfer and Surfing. So you got 2 magazines every month, which is
Nice.
you
Yeah.
were saturated.
An explosion. Exponential growth.
Yes, yes, yes. But the funny thing about it is I can find a magazine now, or I can see a picture from one of those magazines online. And when I see it, I remember the caption because
Wow.
we studied the we'd sit around people's houses and we just read the magazines
Yeah.
and talk about them. And that's all we did, it seems like.
What do you think? Like, what would you talk about? Like, what would those conversations look like?
Just anything about the surfers, the surf, the girls, the everything. You'd come in from surfing, and I remember I was super good friends with a guy named Steve Davis, who was an excellent surfer. He was about a year younger than me, lived in Gulf Breeze. We would just surf all day, and then we'd get home at night, we'd call each other, and we'd talk about the rides that Beezer got, the Yancey got, and Jerry Blank got.
Wow. Wait, that you'd seen in person? Or
Yeah, just being out surfing at the pier or the cross or the point or
you'd see like a bomb come in and someone pick it off. Or
Yeah. Or, you know, it was just, that's all. It's just funny how narrow-minded we were. I mean, so focused. It was just surfing.
What would that age group be? Like when you're imagining this is your mindset, what is that age span?
We were in high school then. Like, I think I started surfing, I was in junior high school, but junior high school. And then, you know, when you get in college, you start to kind of spread out a little bit, but it was still all about surfing.
And maybe too, there was more potential obligations being placed on you, or you're placing on yourself, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, but no, just in a nutshell, in my little world, surfing was so important and so fun, and just it was like 100% of our focus. But yet, there really, some ways now I look back, there really wasn't a lot to do around Gulf Breeze, which is where I grew up.
But except be outside and engage in sport. Sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, you know,
I guess
that's another point. That's a really good point, because I think about this too, how sociologically it's different, because we didn't have phones back then, cell phones. And the pier was like the meeting place. I try to put this out on my social media when I get the chance to, but everybody would always go to the pier. It was like in place of a phone, you would go to, if there was surf, you'd always go check it there first and figure out where to go.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't surf, everybody you knew was out there, the girls, the guys, everybody.
Yeah.
And it was just the social place you'd meet, and from there you'd go somewhere else. It was fun. I mean, it was such a small little community. You just see everybody all the time, it seems like. The pier, you'd never go wrong. And so it's just differently. It's just different because back nowadays people just do their phone all the time, and I don't know. I mean, I'm older, so I'm not 18, obviously, so I don't know what they do. But it just seems like people don't hang out as much as they used to. It seems to me.
Yeah. You know what, though? I think all of what you said is still a little bit true, at least. I don't think it's true to the extent, but there's been many times I'll just go to the parking lot near the police station and, like, find a friend, even if the surf's not up.
Well, that's good.
I don't know.
That's neat.
But I'm sure not as much. That sounds very vibrant and, like, dense.
I wonder sometimes how much in my mind do I make it better than it really was.
Yeah.
Some things were better, some were worse. It's just life, you know. I'm sure 30 years from now, someone will be doing an interview and go, man, back in 2024, life was so simple and so much fun, you know?
Yeah.
So.
they didn't have the fecal matter blooms that shut down the beaches.
I know. That's true. And you could get a house for under $1 million if you were lucky.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I'm so fascinated to see what the planet's going to do, like resource-wise, just like how much resources like your average person ends up using in a lifespan. And I guess also how much more efficient it becomes. Like, yeah, it's so there's things out there that are saying like basically that your kids are going to be worse off than you are, or like depending on what age you're at. Maybe this is true of many times in history, and maybe now thinking about the time that you came from, there's a lot of crises I imagine you remember as a child.
When I was in high school, it was the Vietnam War. You know, we had to sign up for the draft, which is a scary thing. I mean, fortunately, when I graduated, the war was stopping, and I was so glad because that was terrifying. And just at that era, they were just starting to become aware of environmentalism. You know, that was just finally back in the '60s. No one even thought. Very few people thought about it. Yeah. You know, you throw your trash out the window and stuff of your car, and it was just crazy. Cars had terrible exhaust and all that, but then they started coming up with rules and regulations, and in the 70s we became very aware of it. Ironically, you know, everyone talks about global warming. Well, I remember as a kid, there was a cover on either Time magazine or Newsweek magazine about the coming global ice age. They were super worried about an ice age coming.
Right.
Well, that never came.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that the climate's changing, but I think, in my opinion, I think it's always changing. So I never lose sleep over it. I think we should be good stewards over our planet, of course. And we should be, we should care about it and not pollute and all that.
Right.
I don't know. People seem to get pretty stressed out about stuff. I don't know if it's really going to help.
That would be a point that I think I disagree with you on, which I love having points of disagreement because I think they're so important.
And I think anybody under 50 probably disagrees with me on that, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I think disagreements is actually one of my favorite topics.
Yeah.
I was talking to Brian Malone on the phone, driving home from the beach. We had just surfed with each other. And he was telling me about his relationship with Mike Hayes. And he was telling me that he's like conservative Christian, and Mike Hayes is more like maybe secular liberal.
Right.
And he's saying that they have these disagreements, pretty big disagreements, especially in this time period, pretty intense. Like people get pretty worked up on every side of the issue.
Yeah.
But they're still friends and love each other.
Yeah. And
communicate on a regular basis, and they're surf friends.
Yeah. Surfing kind of cuts through it all. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that.
And I love that story that Charlie told about he and Yancey and how they were diametrically opposed politically and religiously.
Right, exactly.
And about how it's a sin to have Italian food without the wine.
Yeah.
I love that. That was fantastic. I'd never heard that one before. I'm very conservative, but I don't care. I sell some stickers and stuff and art. One of my friends who does some of the art, he's so liberal, so out there. Liberal.
Yeah.
But yet I love him, and I've known him for 50 years, and I don't care. I mean, if that's what he believes, fine. Still my friend, and he probably thinks I'm crazy, and I think he's crazy. But that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't trust where you get your information.
I know.
Says both of them.
I know.
I'm wondering if we could scooch back. I'm curious about your first surfboard memory.
Oh yeah, and I got my first surfboard. It was a 610 Challenger Platypus. Scott Bush had a surf shop in Gulf Breeze, and I got it in the Christmas of 1969. My dad, he agreed to get it for me for Christmas if I paid for half of it. It was $120, and I got almost half, and he was nice enough to pay the rest. A Challenger Platypus, I realized later on, was probably the worst board in the world to learn on.
Oh, wow. And did you say it was a 610?
A 610. So I came in after the longboard thing, had already peaked.
Yeah, which is kind of a disadvantage, right? Because you were less foam was pushed underneath you as a new rider.
Yeah, but I was a kid. I mean, it was 610 and probably 22 inches wide or something.
Oh, wow. Okay, nice.
But it was like a door. I don't think it had any rocker at all. In our suck out quick waves, I think I purled.
I could see that. Yeah.
That was my first board ever. So yeah, that was cool. So I probably did my first surfing probably in January of 1970. My best friend named J.P. McNeil from Gulf Breeze, he had been on vacation in visiting his cousins in Santa Barbara, California, who they live near Rincon. And he came back so surf stoked about surfing in Rincon. And I thought, wow, so he got a surfboard and a knee board. And I thought, well, gosh, if he's going to get a surfboard, I'm going to get a surfboard. So I did. So I remember I went out to the beach with cut-off blue jeans in January. We built a fire on the beach, just like where the pier is now, over towards what was used to be called Slabs and is now like the Margaritaville area. Or now it's not even Margaritaville anymore. But there was an abandoned motel called the Shark's Head Inn. And we built a little fire on the beach and went out with, I think, a sweatshirt and cut off blue jeans and went surfing for the first time. It was probably terrible, but something about it was just so intoxicating.
Yeah.
I love this, and I've done it ever since.
Do you feel like you have a relationship with the ocean? Is that a reasonable statement, or is that?
No, I guess so. I mean, there's times that it's just to go get wet. Like I remember, do you know Jimmy Falbo?
Oh, you know what? I think I saw him in a picture of yours. Did you recently post a picture, or someone did?
Maybe so. But Jimmy and his brother JB and his brother Binky, they lived on the beach and they were avid surfers. And Jimmy's got a karate studio in Gulf Breeze now called Fabulous Karate. But he told me once that his mother used to tell him whenever they'd get sick that she'd just go out into golf. Or if they felt bad, just go in the golf. You'll feel better. And there was something about that. So kind of to answer your question, kind of yes. Sometimes it's just so nice just to be in the water and you turn off the world and the problems and the frustrations and you just, kind of dive in the water and everything's different. It's wonderful.
Do you identify as Christian?
I do, yes. I started surfing when I was 13. I became a Christian when I was 15. It was back in the days that they had the Jesus movement. They had the Jesus Revolution back in the early 70s. That's when half the surfers on the beach were Christians, and the biggest club in the Gulf Breeze High School that year was the Christian Club.
Wow.
And yeah, it really impacted my life, and I've just stayed with it ever since. So yeah.
The reason I ask is because I'm really interested in like the act of baptism. Yeah, I feel like the act of baptism is so beautiful, and I feel like there's something so universal about it. There's something about immersing yourself in water, and it feels like to me like salt water too in the ocean. I
could totally relate to that. Yes, it's almost like you come up and you're a new person, and that's really true. I like that a lot.
I didn't grow up Christian. I grew up Christian kind of adjacent, but there's been parts of Christianity that I've always really loved. And it also seems like Jesus seemed like he was probably kind of into the ocean too.
I know. Yeah, the Sea of Galilee, absolutely. Yeah, he walked on water. I love it. When I was a kid, I had no interest in Christianity whatsoever. It meant nothing to me. The early 70s, there's just this thing that kind of swept the country. There was the surfers, there was the hippies, and everyone was looking for meaning, I think. It was kind of similar to now in some ways because everyone's so disillusioned. Yeah. And back then, everyone was experimenting with drugs and sex and rock and roll and all that stuff. And then I don't know how to explain it, but there was something that started in California and it worked its way across the country.
Yeah.
And it was just this genuine movement of what I would call the Holy Spirit. And a lot of people stayed with it, but a lot of people didn't stay with it, It's been interesting, but I have lots of friends that...
Are we talking about Christianity or surfing or both of them?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I was like...
I'm talking about Christianity.
Okay. Is that true for surfing? Could you kind of state it in the same similar...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because lots of people, they surf their whole life, and then other people, they either get lazy or they get careers and they get distracted. And they get families and all that stuff, and it gets harder to surf, especially around here. So, it's very much a parallel thing. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Is there any like pet topic of yours in surfing or some part of surfing that just really feels engaging for you?
Well, it's all engaging to me. I have a heart for surfing. It's like to kind of show the world what it was like, and a lot of my stuff's old stuff. Because it's just kind of important to me. I'd like people to know that there was just there was a neat time back then. Well, okay, this is the perspective I come from. Pensacola in 1970, when I first started, was nothing. It was nothing, especially in the surfing world. Nobody even knew Pensacola existed. And then this young guy named Yancey Spencer, which is Yancey Spencer 3,
yeah,
he just had this drive, and he became a great surfer. And then his buddy Beezer Turner became a great surfer. And then with guys like Dave Skelton, the photographer, and Tony Caruso, who was from Fort Walton Beach, he was a great photographer. And those guys would take pictures.
Synergy. Yeah.
Yes. Get in the surf magazines was everything. And
right.
They got pictures in the magazines. So,
and you're the local kid seeing these local guys.
Yes, and it meant everything. And so when we started to travel and go around the world, go around the country and go surfing, we would meet people and they'd go, "Where are you from?" And we, at first we'd say Pensacola, and they'd go, "Where's that?" Then they'd go, "Oh, you're from Florida." And they think the East Coast. No, we're from the Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast, are there waves there? Yet when the pictures started coming out in the magazines, Yancey and Beezer gave credibility to Pensacola.
So you were a kid when at that change, literally going from Pensacola is a podunk backwater for surfing to, oh yeah, I know that place.
Yes. And I don't know if people understand that.
I didn't. That's amazing.
So Yancey was like 5 years older than me, so he was like my elder. But we looked up to him so much. So to have a bona fide surf star here in Pensacola was huge. And then Beezer was equally good. Beezer was the goofy foot. Yancey was the regular foot. But Beezer didn't have the same drive that Yancey had. Yancey wanted to be a surf star. He wanted to make his mark more than anything, and he did it. It made all of us kind of like, wow, well, if he can do it, we must be legitimate, It was such a cool thing for Pensacola surfing, and I don't think anyone understands or even cares now. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, but to me, it's like, I want you guys to understand that there's a million little surf towns all over the East and Gulf Coast that no one's ever heard of because there's been no good surfers that come out of it and no pictures in the magazines. Well, Yancey made it happen. And then fortunately, there was guys like Dave and Tony who took the pictures and got them in the magazines, and it made us a legitimate surf town. We had real surf shops. Then Islander surfboards were being made in Pensacola with Brian Waters. There was just so much surf energy. It was pride, and it was enthusiasm, and it was brotherhood, if you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a neat, special time. I think all the guys now, I'm telling you way more than you asked for.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, this is like one last thought or something. Yeah,
no,
this
we
is
can
awesome,
cut it off.
all awesome. And you know what? I almost texted you. It was funny. I was texting you, and I put in, as I was telling you about like editing and stuff, I put in, this could also be a part 2, and then I deleted it, and I was like, maybe we'll talk about it later. And then when I was talking on the phone with Jared's like, you could make this a 2-parter.
Oh, funny. Well, I'll take up as much or as little time as you want. It's okay. It's all good. So anyway, but there's a lot more I could say, but that maybe, fills in some information for right now, I guess.
Yeah, I love the way that you explained that. It was very succinct, talking about the combination of Pensacola being the sleepy backwater, and then having this person who had a lot of drive and I guess genetic ability, and that combination swelled up a surf town, but they also had the photographers to get them in the magazine. So there's like this synergy aspect of it. It
really was. Yes, absolutely. Yes. It was a special time. It definitely was. And if that didn't happen, I've thought about this a lot. If that didn't happen, we'd just be this boring little beach town with nothing happening. And on top of that, to make it all even more special, is we had, people always say the waves used to be better back then and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've heard that my whole life, but one thing that really was true is we had the Point and the Bay, and they broke amazing back in the 70s. And so whenever the east wind would blow, you didn't care about how choppy the beach was. You just go to the Point. And one thing, the road wasn't so close to the Gulf, so they never had to close the park down.
Mm.
And then you just go down there and surf, and the waves would be good. And if they weren't good then, just wait a little while. The tide would shift. And then typically the waves would get good at the Point, and then you wrap into the Bay. And that was a real special time. Those are the things that were better back then, but there are things that are better now. So there you go.
So Charlie Schuler gave me this old video of Navarre.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, he got it from a guy named Brad. I don't remember his last name. He
Brad
mentioned
McCann.
it on McCann. Is there more footage like this? Can we get more of it?
I don't know. I think Charlie sent me that a long time ago. So I know what you're talking about he surfing and he and Yancey surfing and stuff.
Exactly.
There is a neat clip that one of those guys from Fort Walton Beach have on the internet. It's got a Led Zeppelin song in the background from Houses of the Holy. I forgot which song, but it's really cool. And the guy's narrating, showing the different spots and the guys in their Volkswagen putting around and back in the early 70s. I've got a really neat clip that I had Super 8s I took back when I was a kid from my parents' camera. So it was no sound, and it's kind of faded to kind of black and whitish over the years, but I had it made into a DVD, and then I had little clips made where I put them on my social media. And one time Sterling was nice enough, he took some music and put to it. But there's little clips, and there's one clip of the bay that shows the bay in all its glory. It was a couple days before Christmas, probably 1973-ish, something like that. And it's just got the bay, shows the bay coming in. Mark Fu was actually out that day. Oh, God, just a bunch of the local guys. The waves would come in and they'd get bigger as they'd come down not the reef, but down the sandbar. And it was just awesome. It was just so good.
Okay, well, we have too many future topics, so this will definitely have to be a two-parter. And,
no, anytime. You're really good at making someone feel comfortable, and you're good at talking to. So I talk to you anytime.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're obviously very easy to talk to. And Jared told me you were a realtor. I love your communication style. It is the same. I feel like very warm and comfortable. You're very adept at that human touch.
Oh, well, thanks. I've been, most of my life, I was a sales rep in the surfing world. I was a realtor for about 10 years, and I just recently let it go inactive. Now I make stickers and magnets and air fresheners for cars and hats and stuff with different designs. I sell them through the surf shops and different stores, which I love doing. But that's a whole nother story right there.
Yeah, see in part 2.
Yeah.
Happy to be here with y'all. We're gonna play some Jimi Hendrix. The jacks are in their boxes. Clowns have all gone to bed. You can hear happiness staggering down the street. Footprints dressed in red.
Well, thanks for watching All Waves Considered. I'm your host, Tom Hutson. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you found any of this interesting at all, and I will talk to you guys later.